Hello and welcome to the Dreamgarten Path Podcast and LinkedIn event. And I am Sarah Whalett, the creator and founder of Dreamgarten, and I am so pleased today to have Toni Bunkley joining us to tell her story of her burnout experience. And I'm going to ask Toni just to tell us a little bit about herself, and then we're going to dive right into our question set.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So, as you mentioned, Toni Bunkley, professional communicator, recovering burnout person, and Southern gal. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
So, Toni, let's dive right in. Give me your 3 adjectives that you would use to describe yourself.
Yeah, persuasive, thoughtful, and a little zany. Yeah, I think all of those pretty much sum up who I am.
And then how would you describe your life in 3 sentences, given those 3 adjectives?
So it's funny, I actually had to do this kind of assignment at work a few weeks ago for a workshop where we had to tell our story in 6 words. So I wanted to use that here. So I say big head, big heart, small hands. And what that means is that I am really intellectually curious. I want to know everything about everything. Along those lines, I care deeply about so many things. And I'm not an expert on anything by a long shot. So small hands really means I just outsource anything that I can that I'm just not good at. Small hands, get it out of here to somebody else who's more capable to do it.
That you know that about yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, let's move into your burnout experience. Tell us what was or is the nature of your burnout. What's the story there?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And I just appreciate the opportunity to share this in the hopes that it may help someone. So, years ago, I was diagnosed with a mental health disorder, bipolar 2. And I'd been on medication, going to therapy, and I did what I think a lot of people do. I felt better, so I thought that the treatment I was on was no longer necessary. I got this. So years passed, and I was managing fairly well. Then I took on a new work assignment. It was outside of my comfort zone, very steep learning curve, and I literally crashed and burned. Mentally, emotionally, there was a lot going on in the world at the time. This was the time around Tamir Rice, pre-George Floyd, a lot of civil unrest. So I really couldn't escape the turmoil I was going through internally at work with my own emotions and externally in the world. So I really felt like the walls were caving in on me. And again, with this work assignment, I was missing days of work. I couldn't get out of bed. When I was at work, I was not focused, on the verge of tears all the time, to the point where my manager pulled me aside and said, I think you may need to, get some support, some help, or this may not end the way that either one of us would like. And I appreciated her for, recognizing that something wasn't right. And I was also upset with myself because as a professional communicator, I was not communicating effectively or advocating for myself in that time. But I'm glad she recognized it and said, you're out of character right now, and it's been like this for some time. Let's go ahead and do something about that. So I did what I hope anyone in the corporate environment does. I picked up the phone and called the employee assistance program, and I took much needed time off, about 4 months. I visited with new healthcare providers, a psychiatrist and a therapist. I got my family and friends involved. And I said, they were aware of my diagnosis. They didn't know that I wasn't medicated or really caring for myself in that way. So, yeah, I'm glad it had a happy ending. But those first weeks, even months after I took the time off, I didn't realize how incredibly exhausted I was. And as we would call it, Sarah, I was just burned out.
And so reflect a little bit with me. You mentioned George Floyd, right?
Yeah.
Tell me and share your experience of that particular experience as a person of color. How did it affect you in that way, right? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I felt helpless. I felt voiceless. I felt like there was a segment of the world. So when I talked to other people of color, specifically African American women, about what was going on during that time, and just seeing the protest and the court hearings and all of this, it's just this overwhelming feeling of despair. What's going to happen? And there was quite some time between the incident and it finally going to trial, and it was like holding my breath, right? And I also felt like I had to be two different people when dealing with that, we call it double consciousness, dealing with that ordeal in the world, and then having to go into a corporate workspace where a predominantly white workspace where it was business as usual. It didn't register on the radar, and if it did, it wasn't talked about the way, my group chats or my social media, we talked about it openly and honestly and expressed our frustration. I had to kind of tamp that down within myself when I was at work. I'd have to cut out the news coverage. I'd have to kind of divorce myself and be two different people, and that was exhausting.
That code switching.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I imagine how exhausting that would be, because it was just the additional, right? The additional things that were probably contributing to state of mental health. Yeah.
It was fuel to the fire, and I have to share this, Sarah, because I did give my manager kudos in that moment for kind of pulling me aside, but I kind of had the opposite effect. After George Floyd, I came to the office and I said, she knew something was wrong. I was visible, my eyes were red, and she knew I'd been crying. And she said, "What's wrong?" I said, did you hear what happened to George? It's so unconscionable. Can you believe it? And she said in that moment, which led me to believe she had no idea what I was referring to. She said, "Oh, is that your boyfriend?" I can laugh at it now, but in the moment, it was a gut punch. She asked if I'd been crying and was that upset because my boyfriend George apparently had done something, and it literally did not register on her radar who he was. Just completely missed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, for those listeners, at some point, I just laid my head on my desk because for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Then that's what you're dealing with when you're coming, right? That's what you're dealing with when you're showing up to work, and as you should, right? And one of the things that I always highly encourage is, if you can take a break, please do, right?
Yeah.
So you did, and you took time off. What you said 4 months. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it looked like a lot of resting. So I purposely, so if you've ever taken leave in a corporate space, you are told not to work. If you don't turn in your laptop or your computer, you are to put it away, not check email, not check in on the team, completely divorce yourself from work so you can be well, right? And with my employee assistance program, I had a case manager who would check in on me. I can't remember now if it was daily or weekly, but it was pretty frequent, just to make sure that I was keeping up with my medical appointments. I was seeing my therapist, if I was stabilizing. And again, those first few weeks, I was just brutally honest. I'm like, I'm tired. I'm frustrated that I'm here. I'm glad to be here. It was just a range of emotions. And as time went on, I started to stabilize. I was in a better mood. There were some dark days. There were some dark days. But it looked like a lot of naps. It looked like meditation and deep breathing. That's when I started to learn about those self-care practices that, up until then I was just like, that's that new age rah-rah kind of stuff, and I didn't realize how truly beneficial it could be. And I had 24 hours a day for 4 months to dedicate to being well and learning how to care for myself mentally and emotionally.
So you were just talking about those measures that you took to heal. Was there anything else outside of meditation and naps and, some of those things? What were the the list of the measures that you used during those 4 months for yourself?
Yeah, you know what? I had a phenomenal therapist during the time, and what I can recount is she would give me homework after each session, right? She would give me one thing to focus on for the week, and so I wasn't overwhelmed. She didn't give me a list because that quickly could have gotten overwhelming and felt like another job. So she gave me one thing to focus on, one thing to do. So some of the things she would give me is go for a walk around your neighborhood. Get outside, feel the air on your face, feel what the pavement feels like. If you can walk in grass, that's nice too. She said, sit quietly with yourself and just listen to your thoughts was another one of the homework assignments. She said, give yourself a hug. Anytime you're feeling sad, just embrace yourself. And it was things like that. So, I didn't have to come up or think up or dream up things to care for myself. She had them at the ready based on what I shared in the session. And one of the items that I liked most, she said, allow yourself to cry. Because I don't know if other people are like this, but I fight my tears if I'm angry or sad. Like I literally fight with myself to hold back tears. I think that's due to socialization or I'm not sure what. But she said, allow yourself to cry. And having that kind of permission to feel my feelings and cry if I needed to was so freeing. It really was. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's profound, right? That you were holding those things back, and then she gave you this permission to just allow those feelings to come, and then so crying is actually a beautiful cleansing tool, right?
It is. And apparently I was backed up, Sarah, like those tear ducts. So you're exactly right. Very cleansing, very freeing. Yeah.
So how was your return to work then? What, if anything, had changed, either in you or the work environment?
So I had changed. So even coming back, I made clear before I sat down, before I tried to comb through the bajillions of emails I'm sure that were waiting for me, I made sure to have time with my manager and say, I need to ease back in. The pace, the level in which I was learning a new skill set and doing a new job, I need to ease back in. I said, and I know it's possible because someone had to cover this work while I was out for more than a quarter. So I know that can I take things back on slowly. So over the next 3 months, we evaluated on a weekly basis. And I would say, okay, I'm prepared to take more, or no, I need a little bit more time at this level. And she was very accommodating. So I learned how to advocate for myself. And I know there are people who are like me, a type A person, wants to achieve, and never be told by anyone or myself that I can't do something. But what I needed to be well was to ease in. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you were able to advocate for yourself
Mm-hmm.
in this situation. So, do you have an ongoing strategy to prevent burnout from happening again?
Yeah. Yeah.
That sort of habitual burnout cycle that you may be familiar with. I know I am.
Yeah, I do. So part of the work that I did while I was away was to really reflect back on my time that led up to the burnout, because it wasn't overnight. It built. So I was able to pinpoint signs like sleepless nights. If I have more than one sleepless night in a row, I know I'm getting to the point where I'm burning out. When I noticed that I would get irritable and short with coworkers, friends, when that starts to build, I know I'm close to burning out. And I also, like I mentioned, I enlisted the help of family and friends, and I said, hey, here are the signs that I recognize in myself, hopefully next time before it's too late. And I challenged them and asked them to journey with me and say, if you start to see these things in me, please call it out early and often. Please let me know if a pattern starts to develop. You know when I'm good, and you know when I'm not good. So sometimes I can't see it because I'm too deep in it. So please call it out so that I'm aware. And really that made all the difference.
What an amazing support network that you have.
Yeah, great people.
So our next question is something I'm always so curious to find out. Do you believe burnout is something that happens to us or something we do to ourselves?
So I think it's both, right? So in my experience, the world was chaotic around me, right? But at the same time, I was not okay internally, and it really created the perfect storm. So I believe it's both, and I believe that if you're not well inside in your mind and in your heart, that it exacerbates the things around you, makes them bigger, more intense. So yes, while I think it's both something that happens to us and something that we do to ourselves by allowing it to continue to the point of, like I like to call it, no return, I think it's both. I really do.
I agree, by the way. I'm curious on someone's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what is the best burnout resource you would hand to anyone in need right now?
So I would say, for me and other Black women, I would say Therapy for Black Girls. It's a website, podcast, resource that provides tips on topical things around burnout, around depression, around mood disorders, but also it's a list of counselors, other Black women counselors, therapists, psychiatrists that you can tap into, and it's broken down by state. But I think it's a great resource. The podcast is accessible to anyone, not just Black women. You can listen and get some really great tips about what people just face in general, living life. So for me, I would say Therapy for Black Girls.
That is an amazing Thank you so much for sharing that. I will definitely include the link in our announcements and in the podcast publication as well, so that people can access that.
Sarah, I have one more. This is a new one, and I'm so glad you're sharing. So I don't know if I can say foul language, so I'm going to edit myself. But if you're familiar with Megan Thee Stallion, the rapper, she actually just came out with some mental health resources called Bad Bees Have Bad Days Too. So I love that she targeted her audience, what she talks about, and it's a mental health resource for everything that you can think of: crisis hotlines, where to find a therapist, what questions to ask. She created this entire resource for the community that she's targeting, and it literally launched this week.
Amazing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. So, last question is, what is your song for the Dreamgarten Burnout playlist and why?
So I'm so excited about this. This artist just kicked off her global tour. So that's Lizzo, and I will be seeing her at the end of the month here in Atlanta. But my song of choice for the Dreamgarten podcast is About Damn Time, right? Because I felt like it spoke to my burnout experience, that it was time for me, and she talks about it in the song there, I think it fits perfectly, about caring for yourself and prioritizing yourself and making sure that you're well. She just does it in a fun, upbeat, kind of sassy way that I like. So she speaks right to my heart. But yeah, About Damn Time by Lizzo on the playlist. Absolutely.
Amazing. I can't wait to add it. It is also one of my favorites. I have had the pleasure of seeing her live, and it is everything.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear that. Yes. Good stuff.
Yes. So Tony, tell our audience find you and the work that you do in the world?
Yeah, so I am socially a hermit. So I'm one of those people that lurk on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook, but never post. So I'm always reading everybody else's comments. But people can absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn under Antoinette Tony Bunkley. So you can search me out. Happy to make acquaintances and connect with people. I'm a really huge proponent of sharing what I know, just like Sarah, you've given me the opportunity to do today. So yeah, if anyone would like to connect, please check me out on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It has been such a pleasure, Tony, to hear your story and to share that with the world. I'm so grateful and honored that you shared that with me and that we have been able to make this connection through a mutual friend. And so just thank you. Thank you for being here.
And thank you, Sarah. I appreciate the time today and everyone who's been able to listen. Thanks.
All right, that's it for this month, and we'll see you next month with a new guest, and we'll talk all about their burnout journey. Thanks so much for joining us. Sending love from Sarah.